Act 1. The snow had begun to fall in earnest, blanketing the village in a thick, muffling layer of white that softened the footsteps of the few late wanderers and made the world feel removed from the ordinary passage of time. Smoke spiraled upward from chimneys, curling into the twilight sky, carrying the scents of burning wood and the faint sweetness of baking bread. In these long nights before electricity, the homes glowed with the delicate, trembling light of candles, and hearths radiated warmth that penetrated even the coldest corners. Families huddled near the fire, their faces illuminated in a golden glow, sharing stories, tasks, and quiet anticipation for the holiday to come. Each flicker of a flame was precious, a small beacon against the surrounding darkness, and it demanded care and attention. Before the spread of Christianity, the longest nights of the year were observed with rituals designed to honor the return of the sun and ensure the well-being of the community. In Germanic villages and Norse settlements, enormous Yule logs were selected with great care, often carried ceremoniously to the communal hearth or home fireplace. The logs were sometimes adorned with evergreen boughs, and their slow, crackling burn was thought to carry both protection and blessing. The air was filled with chants and songs, rhythms that echoed across the snowy landscape. Children joined in the celebrations, wide-eyed, their laughter mingling with the crackling flames and the chant-like voices of elders. The smoke rising from the fire was believed to carry prayers and wishes, connecting the mortal world to the unseen forces of nature and spirit. In Celtic lands, hilltop fires blazed during the solstice, illuminating the surrounding darkness in an almost mystical way. People danced and sang in circles around the fire, invoking the blessing of light and the fertility of the land. These communal celebrations were as much about human connection as they were about spiritual observance. Food was shared, small gifts or handmade tokens exchanged, and children were introduced to the narratives and rituals that had been carried across generations. Even without artificial light, there was no absence of warmth, laughter, or vitality. The nights were alive with human presence. With the Christianization of Europe, many of these older winter rituals merged seamlessly with the celebration of Christ's birth. By the 4th century, December 25th became the official date to honor the Nativity, aligning with existing solstice customs to ease the transition for local populations. Candlelit masses drew families to churches, where the dim light amplified the reverence of the congregation. Shadows played across stone walls and wooden pews as priests recited scripture and hymns rose softly in the air. The glow of every candle was significant, and the congregation watched intently, finding both awe and solace in the gentle illumination. At home, families created small nativity scenes, simple figures of Mary, Joseph, and the infant Jesus placed on tables or mantels. These scenes became focal points for reflection, prayer, and storytelling. The soft flickering of candlelight transformed the figures, animating them in the imagination and connecting the present with generations past. In peasant households, the celebration of Christmas was intimately connected with the rhythms of daily life. The hearth was the center of every home, the source of warmth, light, and nourishment. Meals were simple yet deliberate, reflecting both the limitations of winter stores and the abundance of human care. Roasted meats, root vegetables preserved from the previous season, hearty breads and spiced cakes were laid upon the table. Families often shared portions with neighbors or the needy, reinforcing bonds and creating a sense of communal responsibility. Children were active participants. They strung cranberries into garlands, wove paper chains, and fashioned small ornaments from straw. Each item, however humble, carried significance, embodying care, creativity, and continuity. The kitchen was alive with activity. Roasts were seasoned with preserved herbs and slow cooked to perfection. Root vegetables were boiled, mashed, and roasted. Sweet breads and spiced cakes were baked, often shaped into symbolic forms and decorated with dried fruits or nuts. Candied fruits and preserves were displayed on tables, turning everyday nourishment into celebration. Mulled beverages simmered, releasing aromas of cinnamon, cloves, and citrus peel that filled the household. The process of cooking itself became part of the ritual, a meditation on care, patience, and skill, connecting generations through the shared act of preparation. Children contributed to every aspect of the household's preparation. They threaded garlands, helped in small kitchen tasks, and assisted in making toys and ornaments. Wooden figures were carved, dolls sewn from scraps of cloth, and small trinkets crafted with attention to detail. These gifts were exchanged within the family, quietly, not for material display, but as gestures of love and thoughtfulness. Each child learned the values of craft, patience, and shared joy through these tasks. As night deepened, families gathered around the hearth, sharing stories and song. Elders recounted tales of winters past, moral parables, and heroic legends. Some stories blended pagan and Christian elements, reflecting centuries of cultural memory. Music and narrative intertwined, filling homes with sound, warmth, and imagination. Outside, the snow muted the world, leaving only the occasional distant bell or hoot of an owl. Inside, light, warmth, and life persisted. The long night was not empty, it was filled with human presence, creativity, and reflection. Time was measured by fire, candlelight, and the rhythms of preparation. Meals were shared slowly, stories told deliberately, songs repeated and absorbed. Every gesture, from lighting a candle to placing a sprig of holly, carried significance. Celebrating Christmas before electricity was not about spectacle or abundance, but about presence, care, and continuity. Snow fell steadily, blanketing roofs and streets, while children dreamed by the flickering firelight. Adults reflected on the year past and the promise of the one to come. In this quiet, candlelit world, centuries of tradition were carried forward, each small act of celebration a thread connecting past, present, and future. Even as the night stretched long, it was a night of deliberate slowness and attentive presence. Every flame, every crafted ornament, every song, and every shared meal created warmth in the darkness. The absence of electric light made every gesture meaningful, and the glow of hearth and candle became a symbol of continuity, life, and human ingenuity. This was a Christmas of intimacy, reflection, and connection, a season defined not by artificial illumination, but by care, creativity, and shared presence, a legacy that would echo across generations. Act 2. The winter sun rose slowly, its pale light filtering through frosted windows, casting delicate patterns across the wooden floors of the village homes. Outside, the snow lay thick, transforming familiar landscapes into a silent, sparkling world. Children were the first to stir, their excitement palpable even in the early hours. They pulled on thick woolen garments and mittens and ventured outside to enjoy the frozen wonderland. Sleds, carved and repaired from the previous year, slid smoothly over snow-covered hills, while laughter echoed across the frozen fields. Skating on thin ice became a favorite pastime, though careful eyes watched the surfaces for cracks, for even a playful misstep could be dangerous. Snowball fights erupted spontaneously, with children darting between trees and barns, their cheeks flushed with cold and joy. Indoors, when the bitter wind forced children back into the warmth, quiet games took over. Wooden boards served as game tables, dice carved from bone or wood clicked across surfaces, and simple strategy games taught patience and observation. Small toys, often handmade, provided hours of entertainment. Carved animals, tiny dolls sewn from scraps of cloth, or simple wind-up contraptions became cherished companions. These toys were rarely extravagant, but each reflected care, creativity, and the skill of the maker. They were treasured not for their cost, but the love imbued in their creation. The preparation of gifts and ornaments engaged the entire household. Women and men worked together, creating paper chains, threading cranberries, braiding straw figures, and weaving ribbons. Each decoration was infused with meaning. Holly and ivy represented protection and eternal life, while small wooden figures could represent ancestors or mythical beings. Children helped eagerly, their small hands learning the rhythm of craft, the satisfaction of patience, and the joy of contributing to something larger than themselves. This work was intertwined with stories. Elders explained the significance of each symbol, passing down cultural memory through action as much as through words. The kitchen, ever a center of activity, was alive with preparation. Roasts were basted and tended carefully over open fires, while vegetables were peeled, chopped, and boiled with precise attention to texture and flavor. Sweetbreads and cakes were kneaded, shaped, and baked, often decorated with dried fruits, nuts, or simple symbols representing abundance and fortune. Candied fruits were preserved in jars, and nuts were roasted or arranged on platters, their sheen catching candlelight. Mulled wines and ciders filled the air with the scent of cinnamon, cloves, and citrus, creating an atmosphere of warmth and expectation. Cooking itself became a meditative practice, a series of deliberate actions connecting generations through shared care and labor. In wealthier households and castles, Christmas preparations were both elaborate and meticulous. Large halls were adorned with evergreen boughs, holly, and garlands, with multiple candles casting reflections across polished wood, metal, and glass. Minstrels practiced in anticipation of the feast, their music echoing across stone corridors and echoing in the high ceilings. Kitchens employed teams of cooks, bakers, and servants, each performing a specialized task to prepare lavish roasts, spiced pastries, and intricate desserts. Even without electricity, these homes shone with human effort, the flickering of candles and torches creating an almost magical glow, highlighting the craftsmanship of every ornament, table setting, and decorative detail. Children in these grand homes participated in the season with a combination of instruction and freedom. They were taught to string garlands, polish ornaments, and participate in small chores that carried both meaning and status. Games were organized within large halls, simple races, balance challenges, or small theatrical performances allowed them to release energy while learning the customs and expectations of their social world. Dolls, carved figurines, and small wooden toys were distributed as gifts, often imbued with symbolic meaning, encouraging reflection on generosity, skill, and creativity. Music remained at the heart of both simple and elaborate celebrations. Carolers moved from house to house, their songs spreading joy and narrative throughout the village. Traveling minstrels arrived in town, bringing news, new tunes, and variations on older songs. Even the poorest homes took part, singing by candlelight, their voices untrained yet rich with sincerity. Children learned melodies by ear, memorizing lyrics and rhythms, and occasionally adding their own improvisation. Music was more than entertainment. It was memory, instruction, and a bridge between generations. Storytelling, too, remained a vital part of the season. Families recounted tales of ancient winter spirits, local heroes, and moral legends that had been passed down for generations. Some stories intertwined Christian teachings with older myths, while others remained purely folkloric, reminding listeners of human courage, the cycles of nature, and the mysteries of the world beyond sight. Even in the quietest homes, the power of story created a sense of shared history and continuity, ensuring that the knowledge of the past survived through performance and repetition. Beyond individual homes, public festivities thrived. Town squares were decorated with torches, evergreen garlands, and seasonal foods. Markets offered roasted chestnuts, spiced cakes, preserved fruits, and small handmade gifts. People paused from daily labor to participate in communal dances, plays, and mummings, performances that blended satire, humor, and mythology. These gatherings reinforced social cohesion, celebrated seasonal abundance, and allowed communities to share the light of human creativity against the long winter darkness. Fire and candlelight were not merely decorative, they were central to ritual and symbolic practice. In every home, fire was tended with careful attention. The Yule log burned in many households, sometimes accompanied by prayers or specific blessings. Candles were lit to honor ancestors, represent family members, or mark sacred moments. Children were instructed on how to handle the flame safely, and in so doing learned respect, patience, and the symbolic weight of light in the darkness. The act of maintaining illumination became both practical and spiritual, a daily meditation that connected family members with tradition and with the natural rhythms of winter. In these long nights, the sense of time shifted. Days and nights were measured not by clocks, but by the movement of firelight, the preparation and sharing of meals, the cycles of storytelling and song. Seasons were experienced as physical, sensory rhythms, the crunch of snow underfoot, the scent of wood smoke and herbs, the warmth radiating from a hearth, the soft glow of a candle reflecting off polished wood or a child's eyes. Life was slower, more deliberate, and yet deeply full. The absence of electricity meant that every gesture was meaningful, each candle lit, each garland strung, each story told or sung mattered. As night settled, families gathered again around hearths, singing carols softly, telling stories in low voices, and reflecting on the year past. Snow continued to fall outside, creating a quiet blanket that muffled distant sounds. Children fell asleep dreaming of sled rides, toys, and the magic of the season. Adults watched the fire, contemplating the months gone by and the months to come. The long night of Christmas in the world before electricity was a night rich with ritual, warmth, and human presence. It was a time of reflection, care, creativity, and connection, where every action, no matter how small, contributed to the living tapestry of tradition. By dawn, as the first pale light of winter crept across snowy rooftops, the world felt transformed. Hearths continued to burn low, decorations glimmered faintly, and the echoes of songs and laughter lingered. The children awoke slowly, carrying the quiet magic of the night in their dreams, while adults prepared once more for the work and rhythm of daily life. The legacy of Christmas before electricity was one of care, attention, and deliberate beauty, a reminder that even without modern illumination, light and warmth could be found everywhere. Act 3. The glow of candlelight flickered across high stone walls, illuminating grand halls filled with long tables, polished wood, and tapestries depicting scenes of legend and faith. In castles, Christmas preparations were meticulous and elaborate. Servants moved silently, carrying trays of spiced meats, roasted game, and freshly baked breads. The kitchens were bustling, with cooks tending fires, kneading dough, roasting birds, and preparing delicate pastries filled with dried fruits, nuts, and honey. Each dish was carefully planned to reflect both abundance and symbolic meaning, from loaves shaped like stars or animals to pies representing prosperity and good fortune for the coming year. The halls themselves were adorned with greenery. Evergreen boughs, holly, ivy, and mistletoe were arranged carefully on walls, mantels, and staircases. Candles were placed strategically, their reflections multiplying in polished brass and silver surfaces. The light from these flames created a sense of magic, amplifying the grandeur of the space and imbuing each ornament and decoration with symbolic significance. Holly and ivy symbolized protection and vitality, while mistletoe was linked to blessings and love. Every element was intentional, a deliberate gesture connecting the household to the rhythms of nature and the spiritual essence of the season. Music filled the air. Minstrels played lutes, flutes, and small drums, their melodies echoing in the high ceilings. Songs ranged from sacred hymns to playful tunes, and sometimes simple dances were taught to children and guests. Even the youngest learned the rhythms, clapping and stamping along with excitement. Music was not merely entertainment, it served to bind the community together, transmit culture, and create a joyful atmosphere that softened the harshness of winter. Children in castles were both observers and participants. They helped in decorating small trees or boughs, polishing ornaments, and preparing simple gifts for family members. Wooden toys, carved animals, and small dolls were treasured possessions, often handmade with care by parents, servants, or local artisans. Winter games adapted for indoor spaces were common, racing small wooden sleds along polished floors, rolling hoops, or acting out short plays based on legends and folk tales. Through these activities, children learned patience, dexterity, and the cultural significance of their actions, becoming familiar with the rituals and expectations of their household and society. In towns and smaller settlements, celebrations had a communal aspect. Markets sold seasonal foods, roasted chestnuts, spiced cakes, preserved fruits, nuts, and simple handcrafted gifts. Town squares were decorated with evergreen garlands and torches, and people paused from daily labor to participate in dances, mummings, and theatrical performances. These public festivities were lively and sometimes raucous, mixing humor, satire, and reverence. The gatherings reinforced social cohesion, allowed neighbors to exchange news, and provided opportunities to share joy during the coldest and darkest months of the year. Homes of common townspeople, though smaller and less ornate than castles, were no less alive with ritual. Fires were tended carefully, and candles were lit for prayer, reflection, or celebration. Meals were prepared with what was available: roasted meats, root vegetables, spiced breads, and sweets where ingredients allowed. Families shared stories, sang carols, and created small ornaments from straw, paper, or thread. Even without wealth or grandeur, these homes radiated warmth and life, sustained by human care, skill, and creativity. Storytelling remained central to the season. Elders recounted tales of spirits, heroes, saints, and miraculous events, often blending pagan and Christian elements. Children listened attentively, absorbing lessons of morality, bravery, and wisdom. Some stories were interactive, inviting young listeners to participate in gestures, songs, or minor enactments. In this way, the oral tradition was preserved and strengthened, linking generations and ensuring continuity of culture. Gifts, though often simple, carried symbolic weight. Handmade toys, carved wooden animals, embroidered pouches, or sewn dolls represented care, skill, and thoughtfulness. For the wealthier, more elaborate gifts could include small jewelry, carved items, or commissioned toys. Every gift was carefully chosen, not only reflecting material means, but also consideration for the recipient and the values of generosity, thoughtfulness, and connection that defined the season. The observance of rituals was woven into daily life. Candles were lit to honor family members, ancestors, or the divine. Fires were maintained with care, sometimes accompanied by short prayers or blessings. Children helped by arranging small offerings of food or decorations, learning the importance of attentiveness and ritual observance. These practices were repeated nightly, slowly reinforcing their meaning and creating a rhythm of life that blended devotion, reflection, and festivity. Even in the long winter nights, the sense of time was intimate and measured by the household's own rhythm. Stories were told, music played, meals prepared, and candles tended. Each action connected people to the world around them and to generations past. Snow lay thick outside, muffling the village and town, creating a world that felt simultaneously remote and intimate. Inside, light, warmth, and life persisted. The night, though long, was full of meaning, care, and shared presence. By the final hours of the night, as the snow glistened faintly under a pale dawn, families rested in the quiet aftermath of preparation and celebration. Children dreamed of games, gifts, and stories. Adults reflected on the season, the past year, and hopes for the months ahead. The long nights before electricity had been transformed not by artificial illumination, but by the deliberate acts of humans, the creation of warmth, the crafting of beauty, the nurturing of joy, and the preservation of memory. Every flame, every song, every handcrafted ornament, and every shared meal became part of a living tapestry, one that would be remembered and repeated generation after generation. In the quiet glow of a candlelit kitchen, children crouched over tables, their small hands busy with tasks that combined both play and learning. Straw was cut, braided, and twisted into miniature stars, animals, and angels, each figure carrying symbolic meaning. Some were destined for the hearth, to guard the home. Others would hang on doorways, symbolizing protection and blessing. The act of crafting was meticulous, requiring patience and care, but it was also infused with delight. Laughter mingled with the occasional curse of frustration when a braid unraveled or a tiny piece of straw broke. Through this work, Children learned not only skill, but also the importance of attention, persistence, and the value of contributing to the household's collective celebration. Paper was another medium of creativity. Brightly colored sheets, often homemade and sometimes imported, were folded and cut into intricate chains, stars, and snowflakes. The children threaded these onto strings or wove them into garlands, decorating the hearth, windows, and tables. Every fold and cut was deliberate. Even mistakes were incorporated into the overall design. This act of decoration was more than visual. It was an expression of care, imagination, and continuity. Parents would watch, offering guidance and gentle encouragement, sometimes telling stories or singing softly, turning the activity into a shared ritual. In parallel, kitchens became laboratories of flavor, smell, and warmth. Mothers and older siblings kneaded bread infused with dried fruits, honey, and spices. Cakes were rolled, shaped, and baked in forms that carried symbolic weight: stars for hope, animals for prosperity, circles for eternity. Root vegetables, stored from autumn, were prepared with care, peeled, sliced, roasted, and seasoned with preserved herbs. Every dish was both sustenance and statement, a reflection of care, patience, and the seasonal rhythm. The smells of baking bread, roasting meats, and simmering cider filled the home, becoming a sensory memory that would linger long after the holiday passed. Some children were given small responsibilities in the kitchen, carefully stirring pots, measuring flour, or arranging ingredients. These tasks taught practical skills, responsibility, and respect for the food and effort involved. Even the smallest chores were performed with mindfulness, often accompanied by song or story. These moments, mundane in some ways, were transformed by attention and ritual into lessons of continuity and care. Each act reinforced family bonds and contributed to the sense of anticipation and wonder surrounding the holiday. Games and playful competitions were central to children's experience of winter. Sled races down snow-covered hills provided exhilaration and camaraderie. Skating on frozen ponds or makeshift ice tracks became both skill-building and joyous activity. Indoors, when snow or bitter wind prevented outdoor play, children engaged in board games carved from wood or bone, simple dice games, and strategy challenges. Puppetry, storytelling, and dramatization of folk tales allowed imagination to flourish. Every playful act was intertwined with learning, socialization, and participation in cultural continuity. Crafts extended beyond simple decoration. Wooden toys, often carved by fathers or local craftsmen, became treasured companions. Small dolls, sewn from scraps of cloth and adorned with thread or beads, were carefully painted or embroidered. Children sometimes personalized these gifts, learning skills of artistry and problem-solving. The creation and exchange of these toys embodied values of thoughtfulness, patience, and generosity. Even a small carved horse or a simple cloth doll represented effort, creativity, and love, carrying meaning far beyond its material simplicity. Within the household, other rituals unfolded quietly but with equal significance. Candles were lit in honor of family members, ancestors, or sacred observances. Hearths were tended meticulously. The crackle of the fire was both practical and symbolic, representing warmth, life, and continuity. Families would sometimes perform small blessings before meals or upon the lighting of candles, marking the passage of time and the sanctity of shared spaces. Each act, though subtle, contributed to a rhythm of domestic life that combined the practical and the spiritual, the ordinary and the ceremonial. Evening gatherings were a blend of music, story, and reflection. Children listened attentively as elders recounted legends of saints, winter spirits, or heroic deeds. Songs, both sacred and secular, were sung in candlelit rooms. Children learned the lyrics, practiced melodies, and sometimes contributed their own improvisation. Music and story reinforced one another, creating layers of memory and emotion that shaped understanding and identity. These moments were a rehearsal of cultural continuity, connecting each generation to the one before it and preparing the next to carry the tradition forward. The act of gift preparation and giving was likewise layered with meaning. Small toys, sewn dolls, carved animals, and simple tokens were presented quietly, not with fanfare, but with intention. Children learned to appreciate the care and thought behind every item, to value creativity and effort over material wealth. Gifts were symbols of connection, of family care, and of communal bonds, embedding the ethics of generosity deeply within daily life. By the night of Christmas Eve, the household was fully transformed. Garlands hung, candles lit, and the hearth roared with warmth. Children, exhausted from crafting and play, sat close to the fire, listening to stories and songs. Adults reflected on the labor and care that had gone into the preparation, on the continuity of ritual, and on the presence of light and warmth amid the longest, darkest nights. The air was thick with scent, sound, and memory. The world outside silent under a blanket of snow, yet inside the home, life was vibrant, purposeful, and deeply connected. As the night deepened, a rhythm settled over the household. Candles burned low, stories wound to their close, music softened, and children drifted into dreams filled with the wonder of the day. Adults tended fires and observed quiet rituals, sometimes adding a final blessing or arranging small tokens of food and decoration for the morrow. The night before Christmas, in a world without electricity, was defined not by spectacle or artificial illumination, but by deliberate action, attention to presence, and the intimate weaving of memory, care, and creativity into the fabric of daily life. Even in the darkest hours, there was light. The flicker of candle, the glow of the hearth, the reflection of polished wood, and the warmth of human connection. Crafts, games, songs, meals, and rituals all combined to create a rich sensory tapestry where meaning was found in every small gesture. In the quiet hours of domestic celebration, children absorbed lessons of patience, care, generosity, and the sacred rhythms of seasonal life. Through play and work, storytelling and song, they became part of a living tradition that would extend beyond the walls of their home and across generations, ensuring that the long winter nights remained filled with purpose, joy, and continuity. As the morning light crept slowly across snow-blanketed rooftops, homes and villages began to hum with a quiet sense of anticipation. The long nights had been filled with preparation, ritual, and reflection, and now the culmination of the season approached. Families gathered in their candlelit rooms, children's eyes bright with excitement, adults carrying both relief and pride at the completion of long hours of effort. Every hearth glowed warmly, each flame a silent witness to the passing of tradition, each shadow cast across wooden walls telling a story of care, continuity, and shared presence. The centerpiece of celebration was the feast. Tables were laden with roasted meats, steaming vegetables, spiced breads, and sweet cakes, each dish carefully prepared over days of labor. In wealthier households, platters of game birds, preserved fruits, and delicately spiced pastries offered an opulent display. In simpler homes, bread, Root vegetables and small roasted birds were arranged with thoughtful care. Every meal was both sustenance and ritual, reflecting the human capacity to create abundance and warmth even amid the long, cold nights. Family members sat together, sharing not just food but conversation, stories, and reflections on the past year. Candles and hearth fires illuminated the table, their golden glow casting dancing shadows across faces and walls. The warmth of the flame, combined with the richness of aroma from roasted meats and spiced breads, created an atmosphere of calm reverence and celebration. Children watched eagerly, learning from observation and participation. Each gesture, pouring a drink, serving a plate, passing a dish, was deliberate, teaching attention, patience, and the significance of shared labor and reward. The lighting of candles before the meal, a quiet prayer or blessing offered, and the careful arrangement of dishes all underscored the blend of practical care and ritual meaning that defined Christmas before electricity. Music was never absent from this culmination. Carols filled homes, sung in gentle unison, voices carrying across rooms and into snowy streets. Traveling minstrels visited villages and towns, bringing fresh songs and melodies, their tunes blending with familiar chants and older folk songs. Children joined enthusiastically, clapping and singing, learning new verses while echoing the old. Music acted as both instruction and communion, linking generations and reinforcing the cultural memory embedded within the season. Even the simplest homes experienced this auditory richness, where song and story merged seamlessly, creating a tapestry of sound and memory that resonated with warmth and meaning. Gift-giving, though modest, was infused with deep symbolism. Small toys, sewn dolls, carved wooden animals, and simple trinkets were exchanged quietly, their value measured not by material wealth, but by effort, creativity, and care. The act of giving and receiving reinforced familial and communal bonds, teaching children the ethics of generosity, thoughtfulness, and connection. Every item was a token of human presence and intention, a reminder that meaning is crafted through attention, care, and imagination. Outside, towns and villages often gathered for public celebrations. Torches lined streets and squares, evergreen garlands adorned communal spaces, and townsfolk engaged in dances, plays, and mumming performances. These festivities combined reverence, humor, and local folklore, allowing community members to share both joy and reflection. Even in the absence of artificial lighting, the human effort to illuminate space through candles, fires, and torches created a sense of magic and wonder, reinforcing communal ties and the collective rhythm of seasonal life. The symbolic meaning of decorations and ritual acts was present in every detail. Holly, ivy, and mistletoe represented protection, life, and blessings. Evergreen boughs signified resilience through winter. Ornaments, whether simple straw stars or intricately carved wooden figures, carried stories of ancestors, myths, and lessons passed down through generations. Every action, from the placement of a garland to the lighting of a candle, became part of a ritual tapestry that linked past, present, and future. These symbols served as anchors, grounding the fleeting celebrations in centuries of continuity and human care. Storytelling remained a cornerstone of reflection and memory. Elders recounted legends of heroic deeds, saints' miracles, and local spirits. These stories were often interactive. Children were invited to participate, to act out characters, or to add verses to songs. Through these shared narratives, children absorbed moral lessons, cultural memory, and the aesthetic joy of storytelling. Each tale, repeated year after year, reinforced a sense of belonging, identity, and continuity, connecting each generation with the one before. The long night of Christmas finally gave way to quiet introspection. Families lingered near the hearth, reflecting on the year past, the labor invested in preparation, and the blessings of human presence. Snow continued to fall outside, muffling distant sounds, yet the world within homes remained vibrant, full of warmth, light, and memory. Every candle flicker, every song, every crafted ornament, and every shared meal contributed to a living tapestry that bound households, communities, and generations together. In the absence of electricity, light and warmth were deliberately created, carefully maintained, and deeply valued. The human effort invested in illumination, song, decoration, and ritual was inseparable from the meaning of the season. Christmas before electricity was a celebration not of spectacle, but of presence, care, creativity, and connection. It was a season where the rhythms of everyday life, cooking, crafting, storytelling, and play were elevated into acts of reflection, memory, and communal affirmation. As dawn broke, the first pale light revealed homes still glowing from candle and hearth. Children awoke slowly, carrying with them the quiet magic of the night and the promise of new memories. Adults prepared once again for daily work, but the lessons of patience, generosity, creativity, and care remained imprinted in minds and hearts. Every household, however humble, had participated in a ritual cycle that stretched across centuries, ensuring that the darkness of winter was met not with emptiness, but with human warmth, attention, and light. The culmination of Christmas before electricity was both intimate and communal. It was defined by deliberate action and attentive presence, where every meal, ornament, story, song, and game contributed to a tapestry of meaning. Human connection, ritual, and creativity created a light that artificial illumination could never replicate. In every home, village, and castle, the long winter night became a space of memory, learning, reflection, and celebration. It was a season where the past whispered through gestures, stories, and songs, and where each participant became both witness and creator of a living tradition. By evening, as fires dwindled and candles burned low, a serene hush settled over the world. Families lingered in quiet companionship, reflecting on shared experience and the passage of time. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the land in silence and beauty. Inside, warmth, light, music, and memory endured, a testament to the enduring human capacity to create joy, meaning, and connection. Christmas in this world before electricity was not merely a holiday, it was an immersive tapestry of ritual, care, and presence, a celebration of life, continuity, and the enduring glow of human effort and imagination.